Hey all, welcome to Share Trek. This is Raj here, and this is our Sunday edition. I hope you're having a great time so far. I hope the weekend has been nice for you. The weather out here in Toronto has been perfect. And you can see the map behind me. It's by design because today it's going to be a geopolitical topic that we are talking about. So let's get started. Welcome back. So to start with, the Asia-Pacific region has constantly been an area of instability for a while now. After World War II, the Allies dismantled the Japanese army and banned former military officers from taking roles of political leadership in the new government. This came with a guarantee of security from the United States, and a US base was established in Japan. In the present, one of the major fears for most countries like Japan and South Korea is the prospect of an aggressive China. While China has been playing a smooth game for decades, in the early 2000s, China started flexing its muscles. Also, we have North Korea in that area that keeps on saber rattling and launching projectiles into the sea to intimidate South Korea and also to get US to provide it higher profile and recognition as an equal. Russia is a neighbor of both China and North Korea on its eastern flank, while also being a neighbor of Europe on its western flank. The United States was called the policeman of the world because the strength and influence of the United States post-World War II was well recognized, and with the support of Europe and UK, the United States managed to provide a peaceful operating environment for most countries that wanted to do commerce. However, there were exceptions. The oil-rich countries were allowed to be client states where a dictator could be supported in the interest of having control over oil. One such country was Iraq until the US moved to remove Saddam Hussein, and the rest is history. Many oil-rich countries are either dictatorships or its citizens are poor. Venezuela is an example, and so is Nigeria. But I'm digressing back to the original story. In 2007, the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe helped create a strategic forum with India, Australia, and the United States. This grouping was called the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad for short. The primary objective of the Quad is to work for a free, open, prosperous, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. The group met for the first time in 2007 on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, called ASEAN for short. It is considered an alliance of maritime democracies, and the forum is maintained by meetings, semi-regular summits, informal exchanges, and military drills of all the member countries. Now let us turn our attention back to USA. In 2017, 10 years after the Quad was formed, Trump became the president, and as soon as he took office, he had Rex Tillerson systematically dismantle the Foreign Service and the State Department. The department lost valuable personnel along with their experience and global contacts. This was the first blow to the influence that US had on the rest of the world. The next blow came when Trump announced the withdrawal from the Paris Accord, breaking the first international commitment of the United States. Next, he unilaterally withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, thereby reneging on a formally signed commitment of a previous administrations. These two subsequent acts were enough to create mistrust in the world community about the reliability of the commitments given by a US president, which means future US presidents are going to find it very difficult to get agreements because their words would not be believed as much as it was done earlier post-World War II. Next, he broke the commitment the US had made to the Kurdish fighters that helped Allied forces in Syria and allowed an open season for Turkey. And Turkey was always against the Kurdish rebels because Turkey felt that they were creating a national security problem for Turkey. So this was a very bad outcome for the Kurdish fighters who had put their lot with the Allies to help push back Syria. Now, Trump also openly interfered in internal affairs of other nations by propping up far-right forces in Europe. Also, his 4-year presidency deeply divided America. Now, in this backdrop, the Quad becomes more significant, with Joe Biden resuming office and trying to mend the soft power components of US. There is growing activity to build regional pockets of influence to ensure continued peaceful operating environment for the countries around the world. While the Quad is for Asia, there is a move afoot to create a Middle Eastern NATO, which will consist of Saudi Arabia, Israel, and a few other Middle Eastern countries. The 4 years of the Trump administration proved to be too much for the international order, and the influence of America suffered. The result of this diminishing influence is the diminished ability of America to keep oppressive regimes in check. Now, countries like Russia, China, and Iran are able to dare interfere in American internal affairs, and the US democracy is on a precipice. The midterm elections and the 2024 presidential elections will decide if America will continue to remain a democracy, or worst case, will it break up the way the old USSR did. Half of the country believes Trump is their savior. Many low information voters get their news and information from social media bubbles and the right-wing media. Many opinion hosts are making a fortune supporting Trump on some major TV networks. They do not seem to be worried about the damage that's being done to the country. The GOP, on its part, has made sure that they do not support any legislation that can help Biden administration succeed. This even spilled over to the PACT Act for the veterans, where their intransigence was squarely denounced and they had to backtrack and support the passage the very next week. And this did not earn them any good points. Election deniers are winning primaries to take over key positions where they can overturn elections in the 2020 and 2024 elections using the 2020 elections as a blueprint. People such as myself, who are neither Democrats nor Republicans, and for that matter not even American, still have a stake in the outcome, and that's why the whole world is watching what's happening in America. When America sneezes, the world gets a cold. That's the saying. We are watching with horror as America slowly descends to chaos. What prompted me to bring out this video is the latest episode, which was the search conducted by FBI at Mar-a-Lago. Here is the story as I understand, after looking at it from multiple reporting sources. Trump took official documents with him to Mar-a-Lago after his term. Trump had no right or authority to take any official documents, whether classified or not, out of the White House and into Mar-a-Lago. The National Archives negotiated with Trump and managed to get 15 boxes of documents back. And Trump's lawyer reportedly signed an undertaking at that time that there were no more official documents left with Trump. The point to note here is that the lesser mortals like General Proteas and a few other officials have had to face instant penalty for not following rules governing official documents. However, here the National Archives was offering deference to the president and was patiently negotiating. The archives suspected that more documents were missing and still with Trump. They therefore negotiated again with him and then sent a subpoena. Trump ignored the subpoena. It's reported that an insider tipped the FBI of the presence and location of those documents, and therefore FBI went and conducted a court-authorized search and recovered 11 boxes. They conducted the search in the most obscure fashion so that the public would not see it and the ex-president would not be embarrassed. They came with blazers instead of using their FBI jackets. They came at 10 o'clock instead of breaking down the doors at 6 o'clock as they did for others. And they tried to do this as quietly as possible. However, Trump immediately announced to the world right after the search was over that he was raided and his residence was under siege, and that the FBI broke into his safe. This was taken up by the right-wing talking heads and led to a young man with a firearm to approach the FBI office in Cincinnati, and the encounter ended up predictably with the young man shot dead. And this is a tragic incident where someone who could have lived an entire fruitful life died because they were taken in by this vitriol in the social media and certain media circles. Meanwhile, the FBI is also facing a lot of threats according to reports, and also it is reported the judge who signed the warrant is facing threats, and Minority Leader McCarthy warned Garland to preserve documents and mark his calendar for an inquiry. Merrick Garland has been very measured in his approach and has withstood a whole lot of pressure from everyone, and he waited for a long time, and he waited for 4 days after the search before reacting. Probably the Cincinnati incident forced his hand. Trump had the warrant and the receipt of things taken and could have released it. However, he wanted to politicize the event and try to force his competitors from backing out of the presidential nomination race. And predictably, that's what happened. DeSantis immediately announced a press conference in favor of Trump and against the FBI search. And Merrick Garland therefore announced that they have requested the court to unseal the warrant and receipt. And the court went ahead and did that because Trump did not object. This is now going to force the Republican to think twice, because they continue being cavalier with their assault on DOJ and judiciary, and it would cause more peril. And also, when the court unsealed the warrant and the attachments, it was discovered that Trump had been, the National Archives have been negotiating with Trump right from spring, and they had given him a subpoena and multiple opportunities to hand over all the documents, and he did not do so. And that's the reason why they had to conduct the search. And in the search, they recovered multiple documents, some of them in a very high level of classification, which is called as compartmentalized secured intelligence, or SCI, I believe, which should not be taken out of the skiffs. And they had definitely no place being in the basement in Mar-a-Lago. And with these evidence coming out, we have to see whether many of those in GOP who are blindly supporting Trump would now come to their senses and try to get back into line. These kind of things happen in a banana republic. If America becomes a banana republic, how can NASDAQ and world financial systems operate? How can major companies continue to innovate and prosper? How can the American poor and middle class aspire for better lives and to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, and the American dream? What will happen to genomic companies? Will genomic companies have to grow elsewhere, maybe in Europe or in Australia or somewhere else? These are the questions of our time. And back to geopolitical situation. A few countries are going bankrupt. There is a war between Russia and Ukraine. The Asia Pacific is getting heated with China securing bases around the Indian Ocean. Within the EU, Hungary stands out as a voice of dissent, and we had Viktor Orban of Hungary hosting CPAC and then being invited to the USA to be a guest of CPAC. And to my American friends and viewers, I request, please pay attention to the politics and validate the news through multiple reliable sources. Do not let vitriol on Twitter and news networks distract you. Go out and exercise your exercise your right to vote, and make sure that you save your democracy. The rest of the world depends on you. We depend on you, and our entire investment portfolio depends on making sure that US has a stable democracy and the rule of law prevails, because that's the level playing field on which most of the investment, research and development, and progress happens. Thanks, my friend. That's all I have. And I would like to look forward to see your comments below. Let's have a dialogue on this. And please reassure me that everything is good in the US and it's not as bad as I think it is. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now. Enjoy your weekend.